Philadelphia 76ers is they tried to play two different things. They tried to play contender, and they tried to play protect Joel Embiid. It wasn't doing Joel Embiid any good. This goes back to what I've talked about numerous times on this network. Why did they let him play in the first place? Why was he on the Olympic team? I mean, we looked at it last year in the playoffs against the Knicks. The damn kid was on one leg.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Bish with the very latest in the National Football League. What a wild 24 hours it has been with the legal tampering period opening up. And we'll get to the very latest on all of the signings and the trades as well. Of course, we'll check in with Gilbert McGregor on the NBA. We've got college basketball coming your way, 12:30 Eastern. First game of the day as conference tournament action continues, and some teams are already qualified for the NCAA tournament as well, so we will get to that. But naturally, I guess it begs the question here, how did teams know that they were going to sign these players so fast if yesterday was the first available day to negotiate with free agents? I don't know about that with so many players getting signed yesterday. It would seem like maybe conversations were had previous. Wink, wink. We'll see. Let's start off with the Seattle Seahawks. Their new quarterback is Sam Darnold. Signs a new 3-year contract worth $100 million, revitalized his career with the Minnesota Vikings. A great regular season, a poor ending to the season as well. And look, Seattle may be going in a number of different directions this offseason. DK Metcalf's already been traded. Tyler Lockett has been let go. Maybe Darnold is just there to hold the fort down for the future. Not really sure, but needless to say, it looks like J.J. McCarthy takes over Minnesota. Darnold now officially the quarterback in Seattle. Meanwhile, the New York Jets have their quarterback, I guess, fair to say, maybe a placeholder too. I don't know. Justin Fields, who looked pretty good last year with the Pittsburgh Steelers, signs a 2-year, $40 million contract with New York. He gets $30 million guaranteed, so he will start at quarterback next season. Again, started off very well with Pittsburgh until they went to Russell Wilson, and then the Steelers season sort of imploded at the end of the year. Meanwhile, with the signing of Devontae Adams, the Rams are planning to release Cooper Kupp with the start of the new year. Contracts are concerned unless a trade materializes, but naturally they've been unable to do anything. 3rd round pick, 5th round pick. It's expected that Kupp will get cut. All right, let's get to some other players signed on the defensive side and offensive line as well. We'll start off with the New England Patriots. They've made a lot of noise thus far in the free agency period. They've signed Milton Williams to a 4-year contract worth $104 million. 63 of it is guaranteed. Carlton Davis signs another contract with New England. It's 3 years, $60 million. And Josh Sweat, he signs a mega contract with Arizona, 4 years, $76.4 million. And Jets defensive back DJ Reed has decided to leave for greener pastures, no pun intended. Signs with the Detroit Lions, 3 years, $48 million. Also, in terms of the Washington Commanders, they continue to upgrade this offseason. not only by getting Deebo Samuel, but also helping out on the offensive line. They signed Pro Bowl offensive tackle Laramie Tunsil, or they make a trade for him and are sending picks over to the Houston Texans. So the Texans, of course, are going to need some help, I guess, on the offensive line after they have traded him as well. The Falcons have released Grady Jarrett. He signs with the Bears, 3 years, $43 million. And the 49ers have lost offensive tackle Jalen Moore. He signs with the Chiefs, 2 years, $30 million. Looks like the San Francisco 49ers are scaling back in terms of payroll going into next year. All right, now in the National Basketball Association, the great matchup last night between Denver and Oklahoma City goes to the Nuggets. Final score, 140-127 in this one. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 25 points for the Thunder. The Denver Nuggets dominated the fourth quarter to pull away in this one. And Mike Malone, their head coach afterwards, said it was a matter of getting the job done.
Anytime you can go against the number one team in the West. And I told our guys, I know the fourth quarter didn't go our way, but we did a lot of good things yesterday. We just have to play closer to 48 minutes, and I thought we did that today. We tried some different things defensively that I thought were really impactful. But this was you talk about everybody contributing, and this was everybody stepping up and making big plays. And you can go down the line. I mean, CB's 14-5 and 5. Michael Porter 17-6. Nikola 35-18 with 8 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. Russell Westbrook. What about that ovation for him? I mean, doesn't that say a lot about Russell Westbrook and how this community still feels about him? But 16, 7, and 5. Jamal's numbers, and I thought Peyton off the bench, was outstanding. He was at DPOG. Jalen Pickett, Zeke. So good team win. Responded well. Thought our defense in the second half was much better than it was in the first half. Held them to 41%. Good assist turnover numbers. And good transition numbers. So we can't relax. We know we got a tough schedule coming up at home, and then we got to find a way to protect our home court.
All right, Golden State wins their 5th straight game. They end up beating the Portland Trailblazers final 130-120 in this one. Jimmy Butler had the big one, triple-double, 15 points, 10 assists, 10 rebounds, his first triple-double of the season. Golden State now 12-2 since Jimmy Buckets made his debut on February the 8th. And after the game, Steve Kerr said Jimmy Butler is doing it in every way possible.
Great basketball player. I mean, just he does everything. He does everything well. He sees the game. He's strong. Loves to pass. The game just flows when he's out there, and he feels it. Whatever the game calls for, Jimmy brings. And he's the main reason that things have turned for us. I mean, he's one of the best players in the league, and he makes everybody else around him better.
Before you coming on, Jimmy, you guys have won 10 of 11. 12-1 with you in the lineup. I think there's 17 games left. What's the value in peaking at the right time in the season?
I think all the value just lies in winning as a whole. I'm glad that I have the opportunity to be a part of the winning that we are doing here. We're playing some incredible basketball, playing together on both sides of the floor. That's really fun. Yeah.
It's the first time in NBA history that 4 teammates have done it in the same season. Head coach Joe Mazzulla said that he encouraged Hauser to keep on shooting.
I think just trust. I think, trust and belief. I think at the end of the day, there's no shot that he shoots that we think is a bad shot. And so I think it was great that even when he was 1 for 7, the team was still looking to find him. And I thought he was great in that third quarter. But to me, I think, he's a straight shooter. He understands his work ethic. He does the same process every day, whether he does this or whether he goes, 1 for 7. So, the work that he puts in with his, the staff, the player development team, and just his overall approach is high level and very professional. So not much to be said.
Honestly, I don't really know. It was just kind of a tale of two halves. But once you see a couple go in, the rim gets a little bit wider for a shooter. So you just try to keep letting it fly.
When you did make that one look like you kind of gave it's about time type of.
Yeah, I got to be better with that. Sometimes when you miss open ones that you think you should make, you just get mad and frustrated real easy. So I've been working on it this year a little bit. But sometimes you just need to let it out.
Meanwhile, the Knicks' 3-game road losing streak has come to a close. Karl Anthony Towns had 26 points and 9 rebounds as New York beat Sacramento 133-104. The Knicks shot 22 of 40 from 3. The Kings struggled 10 of 34. Tom Thibodeau, head coach of the Knicks, says it was their defense that set the tone.
All around, the defense very good, the rebounding very good, sharing the ball, taking care of the ball. I think those things were huge for us. Defensive activity, the 13 steals, and then getting into the open floor, getting those easy baskets. Really good. I thought Mitch had great impact on the game. I thought OG was phenomenal. Mikal, same. A lot of playmaking, and then Deuce really gave us a great game, all-around game, start to finish.
Two more teams head to the big dance. Troy and Wofford are in the NCAA tournament. Troy beats Arkansas State 94-81. They win the belt. Wofford, no stranger to the tournament. They beat Furman 92-85. Also, the UConn women crush Creighton 70-50. They win the Big East title again. And the Penn Quakers end up making a coaching change again. This time, Steve Donahue was out after 9 seasons. The school announced on Monday. We'll take a quick time out. We'll be joined by Gilbert McGregor talking some NBA up next. Don't go away.
The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Is that kind of helpful when it comes to preparing for a major? Is that you're just like 1 foot in front of you at this point?
Ideally come to a place here at Bay Hill where I've had good success in the past. I've only played it the last 21, 2, 3, and 4. But I've played it well, and I really like that we're heading there with where I'm at right now. I think it's going to tell me a lot.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Of course, the NBA is going to take a backseat next week to the NCAA tournament. But right now, we got some really good games going on and a huge slate on Monday night. Let's review it with Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News. Gilbert, thanks again for coming on the show. And wouldn't you know here, the Denver Nuggets get revenge on the Oklahoma City Thunder, which tells us basically all we need to know. These teams in the West, Gilbert, very evenly matched. I certainly think there's a chance these teams play each other at some point, maybe in the quarters or in the semis. And anything goes. I mean, we could get long series across the board in the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. And yesterday really felt like a playoff series, right? These two teams play a primetime situation, and the Thunder got the best of them on Sunday. Then they ran it back yesterday, and the Nuggets got the best of them. Nikola Jokic bounces back from seemed like an injury that he had with his elbow, had 35 points, 18 rebounds, and 8 assists. He seems to continuously just find different ways to impress us night in and night out. And of course, the subtext to that matchup is going to be the MVP conversation that comes out of that Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander head-to-head matchup. It's going to be a conversation that we'll continue to have as the rest of the season goes on, this last month of the year. But the biggest thing, as you said, these teams in the Western Conference, any given night, anybody can beat anybody. And we're learning a lot to see who can win in a 7-game series.
Yeah, and having Jokic on Denver's side, one big game like this, you never know. Maybe it goes in their favor. Meanwhile, exciting game last night between Phoenix and Memphis. Memphis gets the 2-point win, 120-118 on a late bucket there. The balanced effort from Memphis, getting 7 players in double digits. And really, this is going to be the key to their success, I think, Gilbert, moving forward. It just goes to show you, once again, Memphis is one of those teams, too, that they fit in the middle of the pack in the West, but on a good night can beat anybody.
Absolutely. And I think for Memphis, more than a lot of teams in the Western Conference, their success is very much matchup dependent. They have a very talented team, and Ja Morant is the guy who, again, another big game for him last night. He's starting to round back in form, had some ups and downs, had his season end early to injury last year. They're awaiting the return of Jaren Jackson Jr., but they can get him back in time to get him back acclimated with the rest of the lineup. Desmond Bane is another guy who steps up big time for them. And last night, we saw Cam Spencer, a guy who was making a name for himself in March with Connecticut last year, getting in Kevin Durant's face and playing a little bit, showing that confidence. So the Grizzlies have a deep team. If they get the right matchup, I think they could make a run in the postseason. And because Ja Morant is their feature attraction, they're a very fun team.
Meanwhile, the key acquisition made at the trade deadline, or so to speak, was this one by Golden State getting Jimmy Butler. It seems like wherever he goes, Gilbert, instantly the team is much better, and this is the case with Golden State. I know it was Portland last night, but they do win 130-120. Jimmy Butler records his first triple-double of the season, 15 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists, and Steve Kerr glowing about the contribution that Butler made last night. Again, as Golden State goes here, they just become more dangerous, and it seems like this was actually the perfect player for them to acquire.
Absolutely. I have to give credit where it's due. I didn't think that it was going to work this well, this quickly with Jimmy Butler in Golden State. And last night, you mentioned he had that triple-double, 4 different Warriors players with 20-plus points. They're on a winning streak right now, 1-5 in a row, 9 of their last 10. And a lot of times we talk about Jimmy Butler loafing and waiting for the playoffs to start. But given where Golden State was in the Western Conference standings, they've been treating every game like a playoff game. So we're getting an early preview of playoff Jimmy. He's added a new energy to that locker room. Steph Curry seems rejuvenated, and they're awaiting the return of Jonathan Camenker, who is another key player they can add to that equation and makes them a really tough out in the Western Conference because they have proven playoff performers led by Stephen Curry, of course, but they still have some guys left over from that 2022 championship team. And now they have Jimmy Butler kind of stirring the drink and making everything work.
For most of the season, Gilbert, the Knicks have been on par with most of the other teams in the East. I know they've struggled against some of the good teams. Right now, they're just hoping to just scratch out some wins before they get Jalen Brunson back. That was the case last night. They win 133-104 against the Sacramento Kings, and a win, Gilbert, where they're just going to say, we'll take it. Hanging on in the standings for dear life at this point, hoping that Brunson will be back over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. And, there's two sides of the coin with this Jalen Brunson injury, right? You never want your star player, your captain, to go down with an injury like that. But if there's a team, and any time for a team who's curious about their depth and trying to get more out of their depth pieces, this is a way to figure out what you're made of. You look, Miles McBride stepped up and had a big game standing in for Jalen Brunson yesterday. Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, big contributions, specifically OG Anunoby as a distributor. So they do it on a Western Conference road trip. A lot of times you hear teams get closer when they're gone on the other side of the country for 8, 9, 10 days. This is an opportunity for the Knicks to kind of figure out what they have, what they're made of, and stay in that top 3 in the Eastern Conference as the playoffs roll around. We know it's going to be Cleveland at the top. We know it's Boston right behind them. Can New York hold off Milwaukee and those teams, stay in that 3rd seed, and really kind of get some momentum going into the playoffs and get some more contributions from those depth pieces? So as long as they can get Jalen Brunson back into the lineup and that ankle injury isn't too serious, I think they can look at this injury opportunity as something that can get the most out of them or be a positive for them in the long run.
All right, let's check out the Western Conference standings and the odds to make the playoffs on the FanDuel Sportsbook, Gilbert. And certainly we've seen a complete flip. Dallas and Phoenix now at the bottom. Golden State has moved up into a position where they're going to get in, and certainly Sacramento, even though they lost last night, they've been the beneficiary of the struggling Mavericks and Suns. So needless to say, it looks like Dallas is in a free fall here. They're probably going to fall, I would guess, below 10. Do you see any other teams jumping in, or does this kind of feel like the way it's going to end at this point?
It does feel like this is the way it's going to end. I'm very curious to see if Phoenix can make up that ground with Dallas. Dallas actually got a win last night, and as we mentioned, Phoenix wasn't able to get over the hump in Memphis last night. So Phoenix, I think, is going to be a little bit more difficult for them to kind of make that push. Now, granted, I don't think either of those teams are going to get any wins in the play-in tournament. So it does kind of feel like those top 9 teams are going to be vying for those 8 spots, and it does feel pretty secure there. Golden State jostling for position with the Clippers and the Timberwolves is going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. But when it comes down to the second half of it, I think Sacramento is the only team that maybe could make a push to get into the top 8 and maybe upset some of those teams. But it does feel like the top 8 is going to be set one way or another.
All right, Gilbert, we'll check back in with you again next week. Thanks for coming on NewsWire. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Enjoy it every time.
All right, coming up next, time for us to dive into the latest in college basketball. We'll hit on the future of St. John's as we get ready for the Big East tournament this week, and also Ben Stevens previews the ACC tournament as well. You're watching NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Our sound off is coming up next. Then Jacob Camenker from USA Today joins us talking some NFL free agency. We'll be back right after these quick messages. Don't go away.
The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Is that kind of helpful when it comes to preparing for a major? Is that you're just like 1 foot in front of you at this point?
Ideally come to a place here at Bay Hill where I've had good success in the past. I've only played it the last 21, 2, 3, and 4. But I've played it well, and I really like that we're heading there with where I'm at right now. I think it's going to tell me a lot.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
How far can St. John's go this season? Will they win the conference tournament? Scott Farrell will have a preview of that. Also, we'll take a look at the ACC as the conference championships get underway today. A lot of the bigger conferences. In fact, we got a game coming up in 1 hour from now. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. Well, it looks like the Boston Bruins, Florida Panthers going in 2 different directions. The Panthers, of course, chasing another championship after winning last year, acquired captain Brad Marchand from the Boston Bruins at the NHL trade deadline just before it expired. So Marchand goes to a team that has an opportunity to win a championship, but leaves behind certainly a legacy in Boston. He met with the media in South Florida for the first time and talked about exiting Boston.
You know, I've had an incredible run in that organization, and I'm extremely proud. How things went there. Sorry. So yeah, it was very disappointing that things didn't get done, just because obviously I love the organization. I wanted to stay there. But at the end of the day, I also know that business is business, and every player has a shelf life. And regardless if that's when we want it to be or not, sometimes there's things out of our control that dictate situations. If we were in the playoffs at the point in time, we'd probably be having a much different conversation. And I know that. Something we had talked about previously, but we weren't. And at that point, very tough decisions have to be made. And the one thing that I always respect, I told Cam Sweens this, is they have a job to do, and they have to make the best decisions for the team.
Quick turnaround for Marchand as they get ready to take on Boston as a member of the Florida Panthers. Meanwhile, St. John's has had a historical season. They've got a chance to win not only the Big East regular season, but maybe even the Big East tournament. Rick Pitino with an incredible turnaround job over the last couple of years since coming over. Yesterday on Coast to Coast, Scott Farrell, Mike Carver talked about how well St. John's has played under the tutelage of Coach Pitino.
St. John's is the favorite, followed by UConn, Creighton, Marquette, etc., etc. I think it would be great for St. John's to put a cherry on top of what has been an unbelievable season, and I think if they do, they will be a 2 on Sunday, a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I agree with you. If that happens, I just have a bad feeling about it, because they got lucky in Milwaukee with that shot, right? And Creighton is really good, so I think Marquette and Creighton are going to be involved in this decision. I am not a buyer in Danny Hurley's UConn Huskies, even though everyone else is, and he was on 60 Minutes. I know people get really excited, but I think there's Creighton and Marquette are the problems, I think, at some level.
All right, we'll get Farrell's opinion on the finals of the games later today at 3 o'clock Eastern, because the ACC tournament tips off at 2 o'clock Eastern today with Pittsburgh taking on Notre Dame, Pitt being 3.5-point favorites. Here's a preview of the ACC conference tournament with the host of the early line, Ben Stevens.
The ACC tournament this week in Charlotte, and it should be no surprise, after winning an outright title with a 19-1 conference record, that Duke is the favorite to win the ACC tournament crown as well. But minus 340, I guess, also shouldn't be overly shocking. The Blue Devils in those 19 conference wins, covering 14 times, with an average margin of victory in ACC play of nearly 22 points per game. So who can test the Blue Devils, if at all? Clemson and Louisville, 2 next best prices to win the ACC tournament title. Louisville's second best number, plus 650. 18-2 for Pat Kelsey and the Cards this year in ACC action. Clemson also 18-2, and the only team to beat Duke at a 7-1 price. Keep an eye on North Carolina. They would have to make some noise in Charlotte. 28-1 for the Tar Heels to win the tournament title if they're going to get to the big dance. Craig, back to you.
Thanks, Ben. All the coverage here coming on SportsGrid as the first game of all the tournaments tips off today at 12:30 Eastern, so stick around all day long. Also, one signing in the National Football League since we came on the air. Former Giants quarterback Daniel Jones has decided to leave behind the Minnesota Vikings. He's signing a 1-year deal with the Indianapolis Colts, potentially to go in and maybe even compete for the starting job with Anthony Richardson, but at the very least, we know he would be the backup in Indianapolis going into next season. All right, coming up next, Sam Darnold, once upon a time a backup in several different spots, not only a starter, but now a very wealthy man as he signs a contract with Seattle. What does it mean for the Seahawks' future? We'll talk with Jacob Camenker from USA Today when we return right after this.
The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Is that kind of helpful when it comes to preparing for a major? Is that you're just like 1 foot in front of you at this point?
Ideally come to a place here at Bay Hill where I've had good success in the past. I've only played it the last 21, 2, 3, and 4. So, but I've played it well, and I really like that we're heading there with where I'm at right now. I think it's going to tell me a lot.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Jacob Camenker is really busy trying to sort out what's going on in the National Football League. We've got trades, we've got free agent signings. And Jacob, it happened so fast here in about 24, 48 hours. It feels like most of the big moves have already happened. I know we're still going to get a ton here before it's all said and done, but a really exciting and active first 48 hours, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing a lot of the big deals come right out of that legal tampering window. Technically opens at noon, and 45 seconds later, you're getting Hassan Reddick signed and all of the deals that fell in line after that. So by the time the new league year starts at 4 p.m. tomorrow, we're really going to have probably a lot of the major free agent signings ironed out. Now, there's always a handful of guys who linger longer on the market, especially as we're figuring out some of these quarterback landing spots like Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. Some of that, there needs to be another domino to fall before we can kind of find the landing spots for all of them. But I would presume by the end of the week, the big free agency, the first wave is going to be done. And then next week will be more about those, value pickups and guys who maybe didn't have the market that they expected agreeing to deals with teams.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, so let's talk about the first big quarterback move, which is Sam Darnold going to Seattle, where clearly Jacob, this was the payday that the Darnold was pursuing, because let's be honest, with what Seattle is doing and is attempting to do, it looks like to take maybe a reset button here, press. Like, I'm not really sure, but look, Sam got paid. Good for him. He gets the starting gig. Good for him. A lot of guaranteed money. He threw 35 touchdowns last season, faded toward the end of the year with the Minnesota Vikings. But to me, this appears as where Sam just basically wanted to cash in here. No offense to him. I probably would have done the same thing, but I don't think that this makes Seattle a contender by any means.
I don't either. And I think what you're looking at from Seattle, there were a few factors in play here. They wanted to move on from Geno Smith without having an extension with him because he's getting older, and they hadn't really gotten over the hump with him. He's been a good quarterback, but they weren't going to win a Super Bowl as currently constructed. So moving on to Darnold, who has experience with new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak and is younger than Smith. I believe Smith's about 34, Darnold's about 28. So you're looking at a 6-year difference there. So Darnold could hypothetically fit more of a contender timeline for the Seahawks. But I'll be honest, Craig, I don't like this move from a personnel standpoint. Granted, Sam Darnold going anywhere, he wasn't going to have the same support that he had in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson. But the thing that I look at more than anything else, Sam Darnold is one of 4 quarterbacks in the league last year who took more than 3 seconds on his average throw. The Seattle Seahawks offensive line is not very good, and Geno Smith kind of made that less of a weakness because he released the ball the 11th fastest time in the league. Sam Darnold is the 3rd slowest, ahead of only Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, who have a lot more mobility than him. So unless Seattle makes some massive changes to their offensive line, which I believe they will try to do during the draft, I could see Sam Darnold having a lot more trouble with sacks than he did last year, and that could kind of force him into some of those turnovers. So I'm not a big fan of this fit, but we'll see if the Seahawks can finally fix that offensive line. But we've been saying that for what feels like a decade now.
Yeah, and DK Metcalf gone, and Tyler Lockett maybe toward the end of his career gone also. Jackson Smith-Njigba still very good player and is going to be their number 1 there. But yeah, the supporting cast not nearly what it was in Minnesota with those names that you mentioned. So the uphill battle for Sam. Same could be said for Justin Fields, although I kind of like the upside play here for the New York Jets. Not really sure which direction the future holds for them, but I think I saw enough, Jacob, out of Fields when he was playing with Pittsburgh to think that he still is a starting quarterback in the NFL. So, the Jets will take a shot here, measured approach by them, measured approach by Justin Fields. This is one that could work out for both sides if it goes well, and if it doesn't, the Jets kind of know where they are.
Exactly, and I think that this is a pretty low-risk move because it's so short-term. 2 years, $40 million. Yeah, there's $30 million in guarantees, and I know some Jets fans, including my boss, will get a little hung up on the fact that he has the $30 million in guarantees there. But this is kind of a short-term Band-Aid for the Jets to move on from Aaron Rodgers and just have someone that they know is capable of playing quarterback. Maybe he's not the best passer in the league, but he had a career-high 65.8% completion rate last year. I know that was only in 6 starts, but he showed some signs of growth, and we know he's a great scrambler and a great runner. So that will at least give the Jets an offensive identity if he can't continue to improve as a passer. And, I think they'll probably bring in some young competition to develop behind Justin Fields. I think if the Patriots weren't in their division, I would say that the Jets would be one of the teams that could maybe look at Joe Milton as a guy who they could get and say, hey, if Justin Fields doesn't work out, this potential pack guy we could get for a mid-round pick in this year's draft, which is weak at quarterback, that might be nice for us. But I don't think the Patriots are going to want to trade him to the Jets. But either way, I think getting Fields at that price compared to maybe the contract, not that they were going to sign Darnold, but you look at what Darnold got, you look what Fields got, and you say, I feel decent about Fields at that price. And if it doesn't work out, it's easy to get out of.
Yeah, and some talent with them, too, with Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. You would assume the Jets will also draft a receiver with Devontae Adams gone, maybe even, another upgrade at tight end or even on the offensive line. So we'll see what the Jets end up doing from here. A lot of turnover here. It's a transition kind of year for them. All right, so the Patriots are tired of losing, Jacob. That's obvious here. They went out, and it looks like they're going to spend as much or more money than anybody else on several players. Williams, Carlton Davis, Harold Landry. It appears to me that Robert Kraft did not enjoy watching the last couple of seasons of his team play in the NFL. Don't know if this is going to work out. And by the way, Jacob, it feels to me like the final year of Belichick, too, where they went out and spent a lot of money to try and patchwork things together. But this is a step forward for them. I think that the owner seems to be tired of losing.
I think you're right about that. I also think this is a better plan than they had in Belichick's last year when they spent a lot. I feel more confident in these players. Milton Williams, he's a guy who's on the rise, gets really great interior pressure. We've seen Mike Vrabel do really well with guys like Jeff Simmons and just find a way to generate pressure from the interior. So I like the idea of getting him. Harold Landry, who was already with Vrabel in the past, that makes a lot of sense too. The underrated signing of this group, I think, is Morgan Moses, because the Patriots had the worst right tackle play in the NFL last year. I think DeMontre Jacobs started most of the season, and he rated 81st out of 81 qualified tackles by Pro Football Focus's grading system. So getting Moses, who has started hundreds of games in his career, just gives you a steady option there and will give Drake May better and more solid protection. So I think they're doing a good job of filling needs without making too many overpays. I'll be interested to see how it all comes together, but I'm generally confident in Mike Vrabel's ability to coach up a defense. So adding talent like Milton Williams, Carlton Davis, and Robert Spillane to the fold, I think that was a really good move for them.
And finally, what you want to see if you're a Washington Commanders fan is exactly what they've done in the offseason, which is recognize that the window is wide open, go for it. Deebo Samuel, Laramie Tunsil, Javon Kinlaw, bringing back some of the players that they had last year. Jacob, I'm going to assume that they're not even done here. It's foot down on the pedal at this point. By the time the offseason is over, the Eagles will still be the favorites, and I'm sure Detroit will be right there in the mix too. But Washington, really seems to be in a position here to try and take home the NFC if they can.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that offense now with Deebo Samuel joining the fold. He's going to be asked to be a number 2 receiver next to Terry McLaurin. That's just going to open up things for them. And getting Laramie Tunsil, who's one of the best pass blocking tackles in the league, to block for Jaden Daniels, who has great mobility, that just seems like you're going to be giving Daniels way too much time in the pocket to find these weapons open. So I think you have to be really excited about what their offense is doing. Defensively, there's still some holes for them to fill. I know they lost Jeremy Chin, but retaining Bobby Wagner at least gives them an identity. I think they'll take a bigger swing on the edge rush at some point. Dante Fowler's a free agent. Maybe they'll go after Trey Hendrickson, but I think you're right. This is a team on the rise, and they are keeping that foot to the gas, and we'll see just how different this roster and how better it looks by the end of free agency.
Yeah, Houston, on the other hand, Jacob, I can't figure out what they're doing, right? Just dismantling?
Yeah, when your quarterback gets sacked more than 50 times and you trade your best blocker, that's definitely a head-scratcher for a playoff team.
Yeah, really weird. All right, some other teams, too, not doing much. Dallas included in that. Jacob, thanks for coming on. We'll see if that changes, and we'll follow the free agency coming up this week. Thanks again.
Yep, thanks, Craig. Take care.
All right, coming up next, Big 12 tournament set to tip off 12:30 Eastern. Mark Zinno will weigh in on the first game of the day, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, next.
Which is a great place to be. Are you in the locker room? Like, you giving like the Any Given Sunday inches Al Pacino speech? Are we there yet?
Oh yeah, I think we've been there. We're gonna have a long talk with Rob today about the 99-199 issue from last week. Like I just don't get how he is still employed. We got to talk to ownership about that one.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Possible that while every other state is trying to copy New York and get that 51% tax on sports betting, is it possible that New York will actually lower their taxes? That's surprising.
The question is, of course, what sports books could go there. I mean, we're already at 9 that are the biggest ones out there in the market. So, I mean, who are you really missing?
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Remember when everyone was upset about NIL? You know what NIL did? Make sure Cooper Flagg wasn't playing with the G League Ignite. That's good for us. That's good for college basketball. When the best players are actually playing college basketball.
You're going to get battle tested. And it doesn't matter, Kevin, if you're at home or on the road. If you don't come ready to play in the SEC, you're going home with an L.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Great to have Mark Zinno of SportsGrid with us here. He'll be following all the college basketball games and the conference tournaments, which tip off in 45 minutes from now. Let's bring him in to get a preview, and we'll start off with the Big 12. Mark, thanks for coming on NewsWire. Really appreciate it. So, better's heaven for college basketball here over the next couple of weeks, and it all gets started today. Here is the slate: 12:30 Eastern, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, followed by Colorado versus TCU, Arizona State, Kansas State, and then the nightcap tonight, UCF against Utah. I have a feeling that Gonzaga St. Mary's may overshadow that one a little bit. But first, let's start off with the first game of the day here, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State. By the way, if you have a position here, feel free to take it. But if there's anything else that you like here of those games that I mentioned, feel free to just let me hand the ball off to you and you take it from there.
No, I mean, look, I actually like Cincinnati in this spot. Let's just figure this out here for a second. These two teams literally played in the last game of the regular season at Oklahoma State. Cincinnati was a 3.5-point favorite. They lost that game 78-67. Now they're a 6.5-point favorite on a neutral site floor. Here's the reason why Oklahoma State won that game because, I don't know. They shot 77% from three in the game. Maybe that has something to do with it because that's not who they are. They shot 47% from the field. So, these were numbers that are not sustainable for them. I don't think they pull it off 2 games in a row. The Cincinnati defense is way too good. And I make this, a number of about 6. So I think we're in a good spot here. And I would lay with the Bearcats.
All right, so that's the first game of the day. And again, you can catch all the remaining games, our coverage of it here on In Game Live and SportsGrid later today. Now, Mark, the Houston Cougars, they got to be the favorite here to win the conference. They're plus 110. But as you can see, it's pretty wide open beyond that, giving Texas Tech a shot, maybe Iowa State. Arizona's 10-1, Kansas 11-1. They've had a tough year. And then BYU 13-1. Any upsets here potentially going down to the wire here? And actually, everyone has an eye on Kansas just because of how they've struggled over the last month or so.
I still like Arizona. I think they're really good on both ends of the floor. I think their offense, which grades out, top 12 in adjusted offensive efficiency in Ken Palm. I think for me, that's a team that I look at and I say that's a team that can do it. They fit that profile of a national title contender who's top 30 in both offensive and defensive adjusted efficiency in Ken Palm. They play fast and they're a tough out. They're athletic. I think if I was going to look to anybody but Houston, that's the route I would go. Texas Tech and Iowa State have major flaws for me, and they just have some really head-scratching losses when I look at them that make me sort of, towards the end of the year go, like, I mean, I get the Arizona loss at Kansas State was a head-scratcher there. And they didn't play well in the finale against Kansas at Kansas, but I think that was more of a statement of where Kansas was. Plus, that game didn't matter to Arizona at all. Like, it didn't change their seeding. They weren't going to win the conference. They knew they were locked into a top 4 seed, so nothing changed for them. So I can kind of throw that one out. But some of the Texas Tech and Iowa State losses are real head-scratchers to me. So, I mean, do I want to give a nod to BYU? They don't shoot that well away from home, and that's really the fear. Like, that's not an offense I want to get in front of right now. But when you look at the defenses that they're going to have to go up against, Arizona, Iowa State, Texas Tech, and Houston, those are top 4 defenses in the Big 12. Eventually, they're going to run into somebody that is going to get the better of them because they just don't shoot as well away from home.
3 teams in the ACC, Mark, their season will end today as the back end in the conference play. Boy, what an uphill battle it is to have to win, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Man, that's a lot. Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, 2:00 Eastern, followed by Cal against Virginia Tech, with Cal 2.5-point favorites. Florida State's had a tumultuous season with the coaching and everything else. They're 2.5-point favorites against Syracuse, one of the back end, if not the back end team in the ACC. You like any positions on this today?
Yeah, I mean, Pitt should come through and cover this number. It's a little shorter than what I would think it would be. I mean, you got to remember there were 5 teams at a logjam at 8-12 in ACC play, right? Florida State, Pittsburgh, Virginia, Notre Dame, and Virginia Tech all ended up 8-12 in conference play. So some of this stuff is predicated based off of where they are in the standings. But, Pitt is all around a better team than Notre Dame, and this is a Notre Dame defense that I just don't really trust all that much as they give up over 73 points a game. And Pitt's shooting should be enough to carry them through here. I think they're the right side. Virginia Tech is sort of a corpse right now. It's hard to bet on them because of the injuries that they've had, and I can't really trust them. But then again, dear Lord, I mean, do I want to bet on a Cal team that is just a bad shooting team? No, I don't. So I'll probably pass on that. Syracuse, Florida State is a little bit interesting. Florida State handled them pretty well earlier in the year. Leonard Hamilton's a lame duck coach, so how much will these guys play hard for him? Where in a scenario where, do they want to see him coach one more game? I think that may have some motivation here for Florida State. Probably lay it with the Seminoles here, although Syracuse, again, has some ability to put some points up when you least expect it.
Is the conference an open and shut case with Duke? They're as big a favorite as any going into the tournament. Yeah, minus 340. I mean, in a normal year, I would say look out if they end up playing North Carolina at some point just because the rivalry. But North Carolina's hadn't even come close to Duke this season.
I mean, what you do with that, honestly, you bet Clemson to win the ACC, and when they get there, you try to hedge with Duke in the game itself. Like, that's just the easiest way to play that, right? Try to make sure you get some money out of it when it's all said and done. But Duke has lapped the field. Duke did lose to Clemson. I give Clemson respect. They are absolutely a tournament team no matter what happens. But that was in Clemson, and I think Duke was undefeated in conference play at the time, like they were going to lose a game at some point. So I don't think there's any real reason to believe that that Clemson can beat them on a neutral floor, especially when it comes down to playing for the ACC title. Could happen, but again, I would play a future on Clemson and then hedge when Duke plays Clemson in the final.
All right, little money line parlay could be. All right, so the SEC has been dominated by Auburn all season long. They picked a weird time to have their first losing week of the season, which was last week, although a last-second bucket too. They're still the favorite to win. Mark, I have a feeling they will not. I think someone else could easily upset them in some sort of SEC championship game of some kind. Look at these odds. You have 4 teams less than 7-1.
Yeah, and again, I would look at Florida would be the team that I would put my money on. They feel like the most complete team right now and the most unbeatable.
All right. Well, we'll see when the SEC tournament gets started as well. They go through Sunday. Thanks again, Mark, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch up for the madness next week. Thanks again. All right. We'll be right back with some last licks. We will head out to the golf course and also hear from a Boston Red Sox legend.
Which is a great place to be. Are you in the locker room? Like, you giving like the Any Given Sunday inches Al Pacino speech? Are we there yet?
Oh yeah, I think we've been there. We're gonna have a long talk with Rob today about the 99-199 issue from last week. Like, I just don't get how he is still employed. We gotta talk to ownership about that one.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Possible that while every other state is trying to copy New York and get that 51% tax on sports betting, is it possible that New York will actually lower their taxes? That's surprising.
The question is, of course, what sports books could go there. I mean, we're already at 9 that are the biggest ones out there in the market. So, I mean, who are you really missing?
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Remember when everyone was upset about NIL? You know what NIL did? Make sure Cooper Flag wasn't playing with the G League Ignite. That's good for us. That's good for college basketball. When the best players are actually playing college basketball.
You're going to get battle tested. And it doesn't matter, Kevin, if you're at home or on the road. If you don't come ready to play in the SEC, you're going home with an L.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. You know, the new game MLB The Show is coming out in the next week or so, but Fortnite got a little bit ahead of MLB The Show with some Major League Baseball. Also, a nice way to make a secondary income if you like chasing golf balls. And why is a Hall of Famer getting clapped back by someone in his organization? Time now for some last licks. Always find these stories very peculiar. The Boston Globe reports that former Red Sox legend and Hall of Famer Jim Rice was, I guess, around one of the batting cages in Fort Myers, and a player went up to him just to ask him for a little bit of advice on hitting. This is not unusual. It happens all throughout spring training. But apparently a staffer of the Red Sox, after hearing Rice's response to the hitter, told Rice that that is not what we are preaching within the organization. And essentially, I mean, kind of telling Jim Rice, stay away from the guys, in not so many words. So Jim Rice not going to be happy to hear this. And I always am fascinated by this when a Hall of Famer who shows up to camp essentially just to be a presence there is being told by somebody in the organization that we don't want you to talk to the guys. That's kind of what's happening here. Now, the general manager, Craig Breslow, took the high road here, basically saying that he's a big part of the organization. He's been coming here for 25 years and also can still come. But needless to say, you upset one of these guys from coming, they may not show up again next year. So not really sure what's going on here in Fort Myers, but needless to say, if somebody who has played for decades in Major League Baseball and is in the National Baseball Hall of Fame, you would think that they'd have some advice to give. But apparently in this case, somebody on the Red Sox thinks not. Okay, do you want to make a secondary form of income chasing around golf balls? Well, this gentleman named Jim Best in Jacksonville has been doing it for many, many years and says that he's making a salary off of it. In fact, the TPC Sawgrass, basically what this guy does is scuba dives in the lakes there and has been pulling golf balls out of the water for years and then goes ahead and sells them and makes a salary off of it. I mean, I guess the one part about this is that there are alligators in Jacksonville. There are alligators all throughout Florida, and this is part of the gig, to make sure that you don't get eaten by an alligator by grabbing golf balls. In fact, this gentleman named Jim says that even sometimes he can't even see in the water, but he has an idea where the golf balls are, so he just puts his hand down there and grabs them. And there's, actually a really cool story about this, which you could Google. You see that he's picking up buckets of golf balls as well. So, hey, if this is the way that you want to make an income, so be it. By the way, how much is he getting by selling these individual golf balls? It seems like maybe 50 cents or $1 a ball. If you add that by 70,000, maybe that's 35,000 a year, $70,000 a year, just for, doing something extra. I don't know that. That's what he said. 70,000. 70,000 golf. That's what the story says. 70,000. Frank, I'm not making it up. I'm just telling you what I read. 70,000. I mean, how many is that every day? I'm not really good at math, but divide that by 365. It's I mean, is it inconceivable? 50, 100 balls a day? I think it can be done. Making the secondary form of income, not primary. 35,000. I don't think so. He's making it happen, Frank, okay? I don't make the stories. All right, finally, this is one that is a fake story, but a real one here. If you play Fortnite, which I'm guessing that a lot of people streaming the show that are on the younger side do, that you have an opportunity right now to buy what's called a skin of Dodgers superstar MVP Shohei Ohtani. Currently available now on Fortnite. I know a lot of the young kids play this too. I try to keep my son, honestly, away from this game as much as I possibly can. All his buddies are playing, and when they are, I usually walk up into his room and I'm like, isn't there something else? No offense to Fortnite, that you can be playing, because the game is, they play it and they play it for hours and hours at a time. Good news, go outside, play baseball, do something else. But if you like Shohei Ohtani and this is your thing, a couple of bucks will get you looking like Shohei Ohtani on Fortnite this season. I'm more of an MLB The Show kind of player. That I can endorse. You learn about the players, the history of it, pitches, everything else. Fortnite, I don't know what you're learning. How to shoot people, I guess. All right, that'll do it for the show today. Coming up, we got Smiley at noon, and then 3 o'clock Eastern, we'll have recaps of the first couple of games in the Big 12 and the ACC for all Coast to Coast at 3 o'clock Eastern, followed by Game Time Decisions, in-game live game day, and tonight on Sports Rage, I'm guessing because the big game of the day is out west between St. Mary's and Gonzaga, I'm guessing Gabe will have that covered for you tonight as to who wins. Both teams probably in the NCAA tournament, of course, but only one will win the conference championship. That game is tonight. Thanks again to Gilbert McGregor and Jacob Camenker and Mark Zinno for coming on the show. Thanks to Rob for stepping in for Luke. For my producer, Frank, I'm Craig Mish. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you tomorrow for our next edition of NewsWire, exclusively here on Sports.